The pump motor was still whining when my phone lit up inside the equipment cabinet, screen bright against the pipes and spiderwebs. Boss, call me. Now. I had one knee on the concrete pad, one hand on the filter clamp, trying to act like my pulse wasn't climbing. The cabinet door was half open, so I could see the edge of the pool deck, the clean line where water met tile, and beyond that the patio that looked like a magazine spread. Vivian Hart lay on a lounger under a striped umbrella like she'd been placed there on purpose. No book. No drink. Just her eyes locked on the cabinet like she was waiting for me to make a mistake. I wiped my hand on my shorts, felt grit from the powder, and stood up slowly. The metal door creaked a little as I pushed it wider. Vivian didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just lifted her chin a fraction and said, low and controlled, like she was talking to herself more than to me. "You're making it hard for me to behave." The words landed in the space between us like a dropped glass. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just placed. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, like it was impatient. For a second I didn't move. I looked at her, then at the pool, then back at her, trying to decide what kind of day I was having. 6 days earlier, this job had just been a ticket on my route. I'm a pool tech in Santa Barbara. I'm the guy who shows up, fixes what's broken, tests the water, logs the numbers, and leaves. Routine is my oxygen. Same roads, same stops, same checklist. When the office added, "New client, hard residence, debris removal, chemical check," I pictured a gate code and a housekeeper who wouldn't look up. Vivian opened the door herself. Barefoot. A glass of lemonade in her hand like it was a normal thing to offer a stranger with a tool bag. She didn't flirt. Not really. She watched. Like she was checking for honesty in the way I moved. And when I knelt by the skimmer and reached in, I felt her gaze on the back of my neck like sunlight. Now I was back at her place, and the sun had started leaning into late afternoon, warming the stone tiles, turning the water into a sheet of light that hurt to look at. "Vivian," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Professional. The way you talk when you're trying to keep your future intact." She didn't answer right away. She swung her feet down from the lounger and stood. Smooth, unhurried. Like she could take her time because time belonged to her. I could hear the pump, the faint rush of water through the returns. Everything doing what it was supposed to do. My phone buzzed a third time. I stepped out of the cabinet fully and pulled the phone from my pocket. My boss's name sat there like a warning sign. Vivian started walking toward me. Not fast. Not slow. The kind of pace that makes you notice each step. "Is that work?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I have to take it." She stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell citrus on her, lemonade, or maybe something else. Her hair was pinned up in a way that made her look put together without looking like she tried. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes weren't calm. They were sharp. Focused. "You can take it," she said. "I'm not stopping you." The way she said it made it sound like she was stopping something anyway. I glanced at the driveway through the slats of the gate. No cars. No movement. The neighborhood was quiet in that expensive way, perfect hedges, no barking dogs, no kids on bikes. Just ocean air and money. I hit accept and brought the phone to my ear. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. My boss didn't do small talk. "Did you stay at the Hart place after hours last week?" "No," I said too fast. I forced myself to slow down. "I was there to close out the startup. The timer was acting up." I logged it. There was a pause on the line, like he was deciding whether to believe me or whether it mattered. "You were scheduled 9 to 10:30, he said. "The invoice shows you clocked out at 10:30, but the gate log from the community, yeah, they send it, shows your truck leaving at 12:06. My throat tightened. I stared past Vivian at the pool, at the clean water, at the little ripples that meant the returns were pushing right. Everything in front of me looked perfect, which made the conversation feel even worse. "I didn't leave at 12, I said. "I left before 11. I remember because… Logan, he cut in. I'm not calling to argue with you. I'm calling because I got an email this morning. I shifted my weight, stepping away from the cabinet so Vivian couldn't hear every word. The deck was hot under my shoes. What email? I asked. Anonymous, he said. From a Gmail address with no name. It says you've been spending extended time at the Hart residence, and that your behavior is too familiar. The way he said familiar made it sound dirty even though it was just a word. My eyes flicked to Vivian. She was still standing there, arms relaxed at her sides, face calm. But she was watching me closely, like she could tell what kind of trouble this was by the pitch of my boss's voice. I'm working, I said into the phone. I'm on site right now. Everything I do is on the checklist. That's what I need you to stick to, he said. Because you know what kind of account this is. New client. High-end. They sneeze and we catch it. You get me? I swallowed. Yeah. And don't make me the guy who has to guess, he added. If you're going off the clock and hanging out at a client's house, I can't protect you. I stared at the cabinet again, at the pressure gauge and the little smear of dust on the PVC. My hands felt numb. Not from cold. From the feeling of being small. I'm not hanging out, I said. I'm doing the work. Then finish. Log everything. Be clean, he said. And leave when you're done. I'm serious. He didn't say Vivian's name, but he didn't have to. It was in the air. I'll send you photos, I told him. Before and after. Chemicals. Filter reading. Everything. That would help, he said, and I could hear the relief under the frustration. Because if this turns into a complaint, I need something other than your word. My jaw clenched. Who sent it? Doesn't matter, he said. Could be a neighbor. Could be her husband. Could be somebody paid to watch. I don't know. But it landed in my inbox, so now it matters. He lowered his voice, like the office walls had ears. I'm putting it like this, he said. This is your warning shot. You keep it professional, you keep it tight, you keep it on company time only. And if she tries to blur it, you don't. I looked up and Vivian lifted an eyebrow, like she could tell I'd just been told not to do exactly what she wanted. I understand, I said. Good, my boss replied. Call me when you're off the property. The line clicked dead. I stood there for a second with the phone still at my ear, listening to nothing. Then I turned back toward the pool equipment like it was the only safe thing in the world. Vivian's eyes followed me. You okay? She asked. Just work stuff, I said, and I hated how thin it sounded. She took a step closer. Not close enough to touch me, but close enough that it felt like she could if she wanted. Work stuff, she repeated, like she was tasting the phrase. I forced myself to crouch down and focus. I checked the pressure again. I adjusted the valve. I pulled my test kit and did the numbers twice, just to make sure I wasn't shaking. Chlorine was steady. pH was right where I left it last visit. I wrote everything down in the app with my thumb moving a little too fast. Vivian hovered near the edge of the cabinet, watching me like she was watching a show she paid for. When I finished, I snapped a few photos: gauge, equipment, the clear pool surface, the test strip next to the chart. Proof. Insurance. I stood, put my kit back in the bag, and zipped it like I was sealing something away. I'm done, I said. Vivian's mouth curved slightly, not a smile exactly. More like she'd expected me to say that. Already? She asked. It's handled, I said. I have other stops. You always have other stops, she said. I didn't answer. I walked around her instead, keeping space, heading for the side gate. My truck keys felt heavy in my pocket. She followed me with her eyes the whole way. At the gate, I paused long enough to type a quick message to my boss, on my way out. Sending photos now. And hit send with my thumb. Then I pushed the gate open and stepped into the quiet street, the air cooler out there, the ocean smell stronger. I got into the truck, started it, and pulled away without looking back. 2 blocks down, my phone buzzed on the seat. A text. Vivian, dinner. Tonight. I don't want to eat alone. I stared at the screen at a red light, my hands still on the wheel. It wasn't a question. It wasn't flirty. It was direct in the same way she looked at me, like she'd already decided what the answer should be. Another buzz. Vivian, not at the house. Somewhere neutral. That made it worse, not better, because it meant she understood the line and was stepping over it anyway. The light turned green. I drove, but my head stayed stuck back at that equipment cabinet, at my boss's voice saying warning shot, at Vivian standing there like consequences didn't apply to her. I pulled into the next client's driveway and just sat there for a moment, engine idling, looking at my hands. If I said no, I was safe on paper, but it didn't feel like it would end anything. If I said yes, I was stepping into a situation where I had nothing to lose except everything. I typed back with my thumb, kept it short, tried to sound like I still owned myself. 1 hour. That's it. Vivian picked the place, which should have been my first clue that neutral meant neutral for her, not for me. It was a small spot tucked behind a row of palms, 2 blocks off the beach. Low lighting, white stucco walls, a patio you couldn't see from the street unless you already knew where to look. The kind of place locals used on quiet nights and rich people used when they didn't want photos. I parked my truck on a side street with metered spots and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror like an idiot. Hair fine. Shirt clean enough. Hands still smelled faintly like chlorine no matter how much I rubbed them with sanitizer. I walked in and saw her immediately. Vivian was at a table near the back, not hiding, just positioned. She wore a simple black top and jeans, nothing flashy, but everything about her looked expensive anyway. Her phone was face down on the table. A glass of lemonade sat in front of her like it was a private joke. She didn't stand when I got there. She just watched me come closer, the same way she watched me work. Like she was checking if I was real. You came, she said. 1 hour, I reminded her. I heard you, she replied, and then, softer. Thank you? I sat across from her, and immediately felt the imbalance. Not because she said anything. Just because the waiter knew her name without asking, and because she didn't glance at the menu like she needed it. Logan, the waiter said, like she'd already told him what to call me. Can I get you something to drink? Water. I almost said water. The safe choice. The boring choice. I'll take lemonade, I said, and Vivian's mouth lifted at one corner. The waiter left, and for a second we just looked at each other while the patio noise filled the gap, silverware, low laughter, the faint thump of music from somewhere inside. You looked tense today, she said. I let out a breath through my nose. I got a call. From your boss, she said like it wasn't a guess. I didn't answer. Vivian leaned back slightly in her chair. Someone complained. The word hit me harder coming from her, like it became official just because she said it. You knew? I asked. I suspected, she said. This neighborhood runs on suspicion. People get bored. They start watching each other. Or somebody wanted to send a message. I said. Vivian's eyes didn't move, but something in her face tightened. Mark. I added, not as an accusation, just saying the name out loud to see what it did. Her hand moved to her glass. She didn't pick it up. She just touched it, fingers resting on the cold surface. He's not supposed to know anything, she said. Is he watching? I asked. Vivian finally lifted her lemonade and took a sip like she needed time to answer. He's strategic, she said. He doesn't have to watch personally. He has reach. I felt my stomach turn. So I'm a piece on his board. That's not what I... She stopped. Recalibrated. That's not what I want. The waiter returned with my lemonade and a plate of something small Vivian hadn't ordered in front of me. Chips and salsa, maybe, but done like it was art. I took a sip. It was sharp and cold and too sweet, like it was trying to distract me. Vivian watched my face as I drank it. Like she needed to know whether I liked what she liked. So, she said, steering away. Tell me about you. Not your route. Not your work voice. You. I almost laughed. I'm not that interesting. You're wrong, she said, calm as a verdict. I stared at her. Why do you keep doing that? Doing what? Making statements like you own reality, I said. Vivian didn't flinch. Because I'm tired of asking for permission to say what's true. That landed in a place I didn't have words for. We ordered food. She didn't make it complicated. Simple plates, things you could eat without turning dinner into a performance. She asked me where I grew up, what I wanted out of life, what I'd do if I didn't have to answer to anyone. I tried to keep it light, but the questions weren't small talk questions. They were the kind of questions people ask when they're trying to find out where your edges are. I want my own business, I admitted at one point, surprising myself. Not like a dream board thing. Just, I'm good at what I do. I want it to be mine. Vivian's eyes warmed in a way that wasn't romantic exactly. More like approval. Like she respected ambition because it matched something in her. You're good, she said. You don't just fix things. You pay attention. I shrugged, but it didn't feel like a shrug. It felt like I was taking in oxygen I didn't realize I was missing. Then her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Again. The screen lit up where it sat face down, and even without seeing it I knew it mattered, because Vivian didn't ignore anything unless she was choosing to. She flipped it over. The name flashed for a second before she turned it face down again. Mark. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. He's persistent, I said. Vivian's jaw tightened slightly. He wants control of the story. What story? I asked. Our separation, she said. Our life. Our image. Everything is an asset to him, even when it's already broken. The way she said broken made me picture that big house with the perfect pool and the spotless deck, like a set built around an empty middle. You're separated, I said carefully. Yes, she replied. He's not gone. He's just not living there. And he still calls, I said. He still calls, she confirmed. We ate. The hour I promised passed without me noticing. The conversation didn't drag. It didn't float. It just moved, point to point, like we were walking along a line that already existed. When we finished, I reached for my wallet out of reflex. Vivian covered my hand lightly with hers, just for a second. Don't, she said. I can pay for my own dinner, I replied, trying to pull my hand back without making it a thing. I know you can, she said. This isn't that. It was the first time she'd touched me, and it was so simple it made my skin feel loud. Outside, the air had cooled. The sky over the ocean was turning dark blue, and the palm trees made long shadows across the sidewalk. Okay, I said, and I meant leaving. I meant going back to my truck, back to my life, back to being careful. Vivian didn't move toward her car. She looked toward the street that led up the cliffs instead, like she was already somewhere else. Come with me, she said. To where? I asked. She glanced at me, and for the first time that night she looked almost uncertain. Not weak. Just human. Just a drive, she said. No music. No talking if you don't want to. I just don't want to go back to that house yet. I should have said no. I could hear Riley in my head already, the way he'd talk when a job started smelling like trouble. But Vivian wasn't asking like a client. She was asking like a person who'd been alone in a crowded room for too long. 1 hour was the deal, I reminded her. I know, she said. Then make it 1 more. I hesitated, then nodded once, like I was doing it for her, not because I wanted to feel what it was like to be chosen. Her car was parked around the corner, a clean convertible with the kind of paint that looked wet even at night. She unlocked it without looking down, like the car was an extension of her. When she slid behind the wheel, she didn't turn the music on. She didn't touch the screen. She just started the engine, and the quiet purr felt expensive. I got in, and as we pulled away, the restaurant disappeared behind us like it had never existed. We drove with the ocean on one side, dark and endless, and the cliffs rising on the other like a wall. The road curved up and out, and the city lights fell behind us in soft clusters. Vivian kept both hands on the wheel. She didn't look at me much, but I could feel her awareness of me like heat. Her phone buzzed again in the center console. She didn't even glance at it this time. I watched the dark road ahead, the yellow lines flicking past, the pull-offs that led to overlooks where people parked to watch the water. "Vivian," I said quietly. "You know this isn't normal, right?" Her knuckles tightened on the wheel just a little. "I know," she said. A few minutes later she signaled and turned into one of the overlooks, gravel crunching under the tires as she pulled into a spot near the edge. The ocean spread out below us, black with faint silver lines where the moon hit it. The wind pushed against the car, tugging at Vivian's hair when she stepped out. I followed her to the low rail at the edge, keeping my hands in my pockets like that could keep me from crossing something. Vivian leaned her forearms on the rail and stared out, breathing like she'd been holding it in all day. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then she turned her head slightly, looking at me without fully facing me. "Are you scared?" she asked. I let out a short laugh without humor. "I have a job." "So yeah?" Vivian nodded like that was fair. "And you?" I asked. "Are you scared?" She looked back at the ocean. "I'm tired," she said. "I'm tired of everything being curated. I'm tired of being around people who only know how to talk in angles." She finally faced me, the wind moving her hair across her cheek. "And you don't," she said. "You just show up and do what you say you'll do." It sounded like a compliment. It also sounded like a trap. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One text. Then another. Probably Riley asking where I was. Probably my boss checking if I was off the Hart property. Probably something that would pull me back to reality. I didn't check it. Vivian stepped closer, not touching me, but close enough that I could see the faint freckles on her nose, the small line at the corner of her mouth when she didn't force a smile. She spoke again, voice lower, like she didn't want the ocean to hear. "You can walk away," she said. "I won't stop you." But her eyes said something else. Her eyes said she'd remember if I did. I stood there with the wind hitting my face, the cliff drop behind the rail, the dark water below, and my phone buzzing like a warning I was ignoring on purpose, and neither of us moved, and neither of us left, and the quiet between us felt like the start of something that was going to cost me one way or another because Vivian leaned in just slightly, not quite closing the distance. Waiting to see if I would meet her there or step back as the screen in my pocket kept lighting up against my thigh, and I finally pulled the phone out enough to see the notification stack and realized one of them wasn't Riley at all but an unknown number with a single line that made my stomach go cold. "You're at the Overlook with her right now, aren't you?" I stared at that message until the screen dimmed, then tapped it awake again like the words might change. "You're at the Overlook with her right now, aren't you?" No name. No number I recognized. Just a clean sentence that felt like someone standing behind me. Vivian noticed my face shift. "What is it?" she asked. I slid the phone back into my pocket, like hiding it could make it less real. "Nothing. Spam." She didn't buy it. She didn't press either. She turned back to the ocean and held the rail a little tighter, the wind pushing her blouse against her arms. "I don't like being watched," she said, still looking out. "Me neither," I answered, and it came out sharper than I meant. We stood there a few more minutes, both pretending it was just an overlook and not a stage. Then I told her I had to go. I said it like it was a rule I couldn't break, not a choice. Vivian nodded once. She walked me back to the car, quiet, controlled, like she could swallow disappointment without making a sound. When I got back to my truck, I didn't start it right away. I sat with the doors locked and called my boss. "I'm off the property," I said the second he picked up. Send the photos, he replied. I did, I said. And for what it's worth, I'm not doing anything. I'm not messing around. I'm working. Another pause. I want to believe that, he said. But the email didn't come from nowhere. I hung up, drove home, and slept like a guy trying to outrun his own thoughts. It didn't work. The next week turned into a pattern the way mildew turns into a stain, slow, quiet, then suddenly it's everywhere. I'd show up at the Hart place on schedule, in uniform, on company time. I'd do everything clean. Test, adjust, brush, log, photos. I'd keep my eyes on the numbers, not on Vivian. And then, once my truck was parked back on the street and my time clock was off, my phone would buzz. A short message. No emojis. No fluff. Coffee? Or, I'm sitting outside. Don't make me do it alone. I tried ignoring the first two. The third one got me, because it wasn't romantic. It was just lonely in a way that made me feel like a bad person for having boundaries. So I'd walk back through the side gate, no tool bag, no company shirt, nothing that could be photographed and explained. Just me. Vivian never met me at the front door. Always the patio. Always the pool. Like she didn't want the house itself involved. Like she knew that was where the story got ugly. Sometimes it was lemonade again, cold glass sweating in her hand while she asked me about my day like it mattered. Sometimes it was tea, or leftover food she pushed toward me without making it a big deal. We didn't do anything dramatic. We talked. We sat in silence. We watched the pool lights ripple across the water like it was a fireplace. Once, we ended up at the beach just before dawn. The sand was cold, the sky pale, and Vivian walked barefoot like she'd forgotten how to do it until she did. Another time, she drove us to a lookout farther up the coast, a place where the cliffs were steeper and the city lights looked like someone spilled gold down the hillside. We sat on the hood of her car, shoulders close but not touching, like two people trying to stay inside a line drawn in pencil. The whole time, the rule hovered between us. No labels. She said it early, like she was setting terms for a contract. I don't want to name it, she told me one night when the pool pump kicked on and filled the silence. Naming things turns them into weapons. Weapons for who? I asked. Vivian's eyes didn't leave the water. For people who collect stories and spend them. I didn't argue then. I didn't even fully understand it. I just knew, no labels, meant I was stepping into something with no protection. Riley noticed before anyone else did, because Riley was the kind of guy who caught small changes the way I caught pressure drops and cloudy water. We were restocking chlorine jugs at the shop, sliding them into the rack, when he glanced at my route sheet. You've been light on stops, he said. I've been fast, I replied. Riley snorted. You? Fast? Man, you write notes like you're filing paperwork for court. I kept my eyes on the rack. I'm fine. He leaned against the shelf and lowered his voice. Is this about the Hart house? My hands froze on a jug. What? I said, too casual. Riley shook his head like he'd already decided. Bro, don't play dumb with me. You got that new account, and now your whole vibe is different. Like you're trying to outrun something. I'm just busy, I said. Riley stepped closer. Listen. I don't care if she's nice. I don't care if she's lonely. I don't care if she looks at you like you're the only person in the world. Rich clients don't pay the price. You do. My throat tightened. You don't even know anything. Riley raised his hands. I know patterns. I know how this goes. One neighbor with a phone and suddenly you're unprofessional. One complaint and the boss has to pick between you and a high-end account. I tried to laugh it off, but it came out wrong. So what? I'm supposed to treat her like a robot. You're supposed to treat the account like a job, Riley said. And treat your future like it matters. That line hit harder than I expected, because it was the thing I'd been trying to do my whole life. Matter. Not be background. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone while Vivian's last text glowed on the screen. Come by. Just for a minute. I can't sleep. I put the phone down. Picked it up. Put it down again. Then I typed. We need a rule. No more visits unless it's a scheduled service call. I hit send and immediately felt sick, like I'd just broken something fragile. The reply came fast. Okay. One word. No argument. No guilt. No. Why? That should have made me feel relieved. Instead, it made my stomach twist, because Vivian didn't give up that easily on anything. Not the way she held eye contact. Not the way she decided what was true and said it out loud. A few minutes later, another message popped up. Then come tomorrow morning. I'll schedule it. I stared at that for a long time, because it was technically within the line, and also the most perfect way to step over it while smiling. I didn't answer right away. I went to bed early, like I was trying to reset myself. Like sleep could scrub a week clean. In the morning, I showed up at the Hart Place right on time, uniform on, clipboard in hand, everything by the book. Vivian opened the door like she always did, barefoot, calm, hair pinned up, lemonade already sweating on the counter behind her like it had been waiting. Good morning, Logan, she said, formal enough to make it feel like a joke. Morning, I replied, matching her tone, because the cameras in that neighborhood felt like they were everywhere even when you couldn't see them. I walked straight to the equipment, checked the readings, logged them, kept my head down. And still, I could feel her watching from the patio, quiet and patient, like she wasn't rushing because she didn't have to, like she could wait for the moment I stopped pretending I wasn't already caught. When I finished and wiped my hands, Vivian called out softly from the lounger. Do you want some lemonade before you go? I should have said no. I should have walked straight to my truck and driven away. But the sun was bright, the water was perfect, and her voice had that calm pull in it that made rules feel like paper, so I heard myself say, Just a minute. And as I stepped toward the patio, I noticed, for the first time, a small black dome under the eave near the sliding door, something new, angled right at the pool. And my foot slowed because I couldn't tell if it had always been there or if someone had installed it after that unknown text from the Overlook, and Vivian's eyes flicked to it. For half a second before she looked back at me and said, even quieter, We're not alone. Like she was warning me and inviting me at the same time while my phone vibrated in my pocket again with another message from that same unknown number that I didn't even want to read but couldn't ignore because the screen lit up through the fabric and the first words were already visible. Smile. I didn't smile. I also didn't look up at the camera again. I kept my face angled down like I was checking something on the table, like I was just another guy taking a break on a job. Vivian set the lemonade in front of me anyway. Glass on stone. A quiet clink. Her eyes held mine for a second, and in that look I saw something I hadn't seen before, real caution. Not the playful kind. The kind that meant she'd been dealing with this longer than I had. Do you know who that is? I asked, barely moving my lips. Vivian's gaze slid toward the eave for half a second, then back to me. I didn't put it there, she said. My stomach tightened. You sure? If I wanted to watch you, she said, voice flat, I wouldn't do it like that. That was almost funny, except it wasn't. My phone buzzed again. I kept it in my pocket. I didn't want Vivian to see it, and I didn't want myself to read it. Both felt like losing. I took a sip of lemonade because my throat was dry, then set the glass down carefully. I'm leaving, I said, and meant it. Vivian didn't argue. She nodded once, like she'd already decided arguing would make it worse. I stood, zipped my bag, walked straight through the side gate, and didn't look back. In my truck, I finally pulled my phone out. Unknown number. Smile. Then a second message, already waiting. You're on the clock. That's cute. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. Whoever it was knew my schedule. Or was guessing and getting lucky. Either way, it felt like a hand closing around my life. I drove to my next stop on autopilot, did the work like a machine, and tried not to look at any roofs, any windows, any cars parked too long. That night, Vivian didn't text, which should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like standing in a room after someone turned the music off. Too quiet. Every sound too clear. The next few days, I kept it strict. I showed up, worked, left. No lemonade. No patio. No lingering. I sent my boss photos without being asked. I wrote notes in the app like I was building a case file. Riley watched me at the shop and didn't say, "I told you so." But he didn't have to. His silence did it for him. Then Friday happened. It started normal. The kind of late afternoon where Santa Barbara looks like it's pretending to be a postcard. Sun low, air warm, people in linen like it's their job. I was done early, actually done, not done plus a secret hour. I drove my truck down toward the beach because I needed to clear my head, and because sitting in my apartment felt like waiting for another unknown text. I parked near a small beachfront bar that served cheap fish tacos and watered-down drinks, and had string lights that made everyone look better than they were. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't the kind of place you brag about. That's why I went. I didn't expect to see Vivian. But there she was, standing near the patio railing with a light jacket over her shoulders, hair down for once, looking out at the water like she was trying to remember what quiet felt like. She spotted me before I could turn away. No wave. No smile. Just a small tilt of her head that said, "Come here," but also, "Don't make it obvious." I should have kept walking. I should have gotten back in my truck and driven anywhere else. Instead, I walked up beside her and looked at the ocean like I belonged there. "How did you?" I started. "I needed air," she said. "I didn't come here for you." "Okay," I replied, though we both knew that wasn't the whole truth. We stood there under the string lights, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. Not touching. Just aligned. The bar was busy but not crowded. A couple laughing too loud. A guy playing with a dog near the sand. A group of women taking photos of their drinks like that was the point of the night. Vivian didn't order anything. She just leaned on the railing and let the wind hit her face. "I saw the camera," she said quietly. "Yeah," I answered. "It wasn't there last month," she said. "I would have noticed." My jaw clenched. "So someone put it up." Vivian's eyes stayed on the water. "Or someone made sure I noticed it." I felt that sink in. The camera wasn't about security. It was about pressure. "And the texts?" I asked. Vivian shook her head once. "I don't get them." So it was aimed at me. Not her. Me, because I was the easier target. A laugh burst from a table behind us. I turned my head without thinking, and that's when I saw him. A man in a crisp button-down, sitting alone at the corner of the patio. Not drinking. Not talking. Phone in hand, angled just enough like he could be scrolling, or he could be recording. He didn't look like a tourist. He looked like someone who belonged in boardrooms and private clubs. Image-conscious, controlled. He wasn't Mark. I'd seen Mark once, briefly, in a framed photo in the Hart foyer, perfect smile, perfect suit, perfect teeth. But the guy had the same energy. Same kind of polished stillness. He looked up and met my eyes for half a second, then looked away like I wasn't worth holding. Vivian felt me shift. "What?" she asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not without turning it into a scene. But I saw his thumb move on his phone. Quick. Precise. A few minutes later, Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced down once and went still. "Is it him?" I asked. She didn't show me the screen. She just said, "We should go." We walked out without rushing. Vivian moved like she was trying to look normal, but her shoulders were tight. I kept my hands out of my pockets, like I wasn't hiding anything. When we reached the sidewalk, she stopped under a streetlight and faced me. "This is the part one hate," she said. "The part where people decide what something is," I answered. Vivian's mouth tightened like I'd hit the center of it. "I didn't want you pulled into this," she said. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was already done. My boss already got an email, I told her. Anonymous. Extended visits. Familiarity. Vivian's face changed, anger, but controlled. Like she didn't let it show unless it served her. I can fix that, she said. That's not what I need, I replied. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then what do you need? I hesitated, because the honest answer sounded needy. And I wasn't used to needing anything from someone like her. I needed to stop being a secret that can be used against me, I said. Vivian's gaze held mine, sharp and quiet. Then she stepped closer, not touching me, but close enough that the line between public and private started to blur again. I don't do labels, she said, almost like a reflex. Like she was protecting herself before anything else. And I don't do being disposable, I replied. For a second, Vivian looked like she might say something real. Then her phone buzzed again, and her eyes flicked down, and whatever she was about to say got folded away. I have to go, she said. I nodded. Yeah. She walked to her car alone. I watched until she drove away, then got into my truck and sat there with both hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead like I could drive out of trouble if I just pressed hard enough. The next morning, my boss called me into the office. Not swing by when you can. Now. I walked in and saw Riley by the supply counter, already watching my face. My boss didn't waste time. He closed his door, sat down, and turned his monitor toward me. On the screen was a photo. Not explicit. Nothing you could point at and call a crime. Just Vivian and me under string lights, side by side at a beachfront bar, close enough to make a story. Under it was a short message. This is your employee. On company time. With the client. Unprofessional. My boss rubbed his forehead like he'd been doing it all morning. I can't fight this, he said. Not with who they are. Not with how fast rumors move here. I felt my mouth go dry. I wasn't on company time. Doesn't matter, he said. Perception matters. And this account is sensitive. I stared at the photo, my face half shadowed, Vivian's profile turned toward the water. It looked like a calm moment. It felt like a trap. I'm reassigning you off the hard account, my boss said. Effective immediately. The words hit like a shove. That's my best route, I said. I know, he replied, not meeting my eyes. But I'm not losing the business over this. And I'm not losing you if I can avoid it. Take the win. It didn't feel like a win. It felt like getting cut loose from a cliff with a polite smile. I left the office with my head buzzing, walked past Riley, and he followed me out to the lot. Hey, he said, softer than usual. You okay? No, I admitted. Riley nodded like he respected the honesty. Don't answer any texts. Don't go over there. Let it cool. I wanted to say yeah. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to go home and turn my phone off and pretend this was just a weird week. Instead, my phone buzzed as I opened my truck door. Vivian. Come over. I'm not letting them decide this. I stared at the message until my eyes hurt, then looked up at the street like someone might be watching me read it, and my thumb hovered over the screen while my brain ran in circles. Job, rent, reputation, that camera, that photo, the unknown number. And before I could talk myself out of it, I typed back "I'm coming" and started the engine. Already hearing Riley's warning in my head as the truck rolled toward the Hart neighborhood, and the sun dropped lower like it was pushing everything toward night. The truck rolled up into that neighborhood like it was crossing a border. The streets were too clean. The hedges were trimmed like they got inspected. Even the streetlights looked expensive, warm pools of light instead of harsh glare. I parked a half block away from Vivian's place, not in front. Habit. Fear. I shut the engine off and sat there with my hands on the wheel until the ticking under the hood slowed. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown message. Don't park on her street. I stared at it, then at the dark shapes of houses lined up like they were all watching me. I didn't reply. I didn't block it either. Blocking felt like pretending I could stop this by doing phone settings. I got out and walked the rest of the way, keeping my head down like I was just a guy out for a late walk, not someone walking into a situation that could burn his job to the ground. The side gate was unlocked. That alone told me Vivian was waiting. I stepped through and closed it softly behind me. The backyard lights were on, but dimmer than usual. Pool lights low, like a soft blue glow from beneath the water. The patio door was open a crack, and I could hear movement inside. Vivian appeared in the doorway almost immediately, like she'd been standing there listening for my footsteps. She didn't look poised tonight. Her hair was down, messy in a way that didn't feel styled. Her face was pale, and her eyes had that glassy sharpness people get when they'd been holding it together too long. "You came," she said. "Yeah," I replied, and my voice sounded smaller than I wanted. "What happened?" She stepped aside and let me in. The house smelled like lemon and something smoky, like a candle that had burned too long. The living room was spotless but wrong, pillows too perfectly placed, chairs angled like they were meant to be photographed instead of sat in. Vivian didn't offer me a seat. She didn't offer a drink. She just paced 2 steps, stopped, then paced again like her body didn't know where to go. "He's back," she said. "Mark," I answered. Vivian nodded once, like even saying his name cost something. "He flew in this afternoon." "To talk?" I asked. "To control," she said, and there was a tired edge in her voice now. "He texted me a photo." My stomach tightened. "The bar?" She didn't even have to answer. Her face did it for her. "He said it very politely," she added. "Like he was doing me a favor by showing me what people might be saying." I looked around, my eyes catching on details I hadn't noticed before: an envelope on the counter with a law firm logo, a stack of papers on the dining table, her phone plugged in like she'd been charging it all day and still couldn't get ahead of the messages. "So that's why the camera showed up," I said. Vivian's eyes flicked toward the backyard. "I asked my security guy. He said it was installed by the company Mark uses. It's under the house account. I felt he'd climb up my neck. So he can put a camera on your patio, and you can't stop it." "I can," she said. "But everything becomes a fight, and he wants fights he can win on paper." I stood there, hands loose at my sides, feeling the weight of my work shirt under my jacket like a reminder of who I was in this. A guy with a time card and a boss who just reassigned him because someone sent a photo. Vivian stopped pacing and finally looked at me head on. "He asked about you," she said. "What did you say?" I asked. "I said you were the pool tech," she replied, and her jaw tightened. "Which is true." And then he smiled like he was collecting it. My phone buzzed in my pocket again. I didn't check it. I was tired of being led by vibration. "Vivian," I said, choosing each word, "I can't be the guy in the middle of your separation." "I didn't ask you to be," she said quickly, then caught herself, swallowed, lowered her voice. "I asked you not to disappear." There was silence, thick and uncomfortable, because that was the whole thing. She didn't want labels, but she also didn't want me gone. And those two wants didn't fit together when the world started pointing fingers. A car door closed outside. Not on the street. Closer. Vivian froze. The sound wasn't loud, but it cut through the house like a blade. Her eyes went to the front of the house, then to me. "He said he might stop by," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "You told me to come." "I didn't think he'd." She stopped, listened. Footsteps. On stone. Steady. Not rushed. Vivian's hand went to her phone. Her thumb hovered over the screen, not dialing, just holding onto it like a lifeline. The doorbell didn't ring. Instead, there was a soft knock. 2 taps. Patient. Vivian looked at me like she was asking permission and daring me to give it. "Go," I said, and it came out as a breath. She moved toward the front door like she was walking into a meeting. Straightened her shoulders. Smoothed her hair with one hand. put the calm face back on. I stayed where I was, near the edge of the living room, not hiding exactly, but not making myself visible either. My heart thudded hard enough that I felt it in my throat. Vivian opened the door. Mark Hart stepped in like he owned the air. He was taller than I expected. Not huge, just built in a controlled way. Crisp shirt, sleeves rolled perfectly. Watch that probably cost more than my truck. He carried nothing in his hands, which made him look more dangerous, like he didn't need props. His eyes swept the room, and when they landed on me, he didn't react. No surprise. No anger. Just a small, polite expression like he'd already known I was here. "Logan," he said, like we'd been introduced. I didn't answer right away because my brain was trying to catch up to the fact that he just said my name. Mark stepped one pace farther into the room, keeping a respectful distance from Vivian like a man posing for a picture. "Don't worry," he said calmly, to her, not me. "I'm not here to cause a scene." Vivian's voice stayed level. "Then why are you here?" Mark's eyes returned to me. "Because people assume things," he said, still polite, almost gentle. "And assumptions have consequences. Especially for employees." That word, employees, wasn't an accident. It was a pin pushed into a soft spot. I felt my fists tighten, then forced them loose. I reminded myself, don't say anything that can be twisted. Mark smiled slightly, like he could read that thought. "You should be careful," he said to me, voice still calm, like advice from an older neighbor. In neighborhoods like this, stories spread fast. And the help always gets blamed first. Vivian's face flashed, anger sharp and quick, but she swallowed it. Mark noticed anyway. He always would. He shifted his attention back to Vivian and spoke like I wasn't even standing there. "We need to talk," he said. "Just us." Vivian didn't move. "No." Mark's smile didn't change, but something behind it did. "Vivian," he said softly, "I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" She snapped, and her control cracked for the first time tonight. "From losing control of the narrative," he replied, smooth as glass. "And from people who might misunderstand what's happening here." His eyes flicked to me again, and this time it felt like a hand on the back of my neck. I finally spoke, keeping my voice flat. "I'm leaving." Mark lifted one palm, not stopping me, just acknowledging. "Of course," he said. "That's the smart choice." I stepped toward the door, but Vivian's eyes locked on mine, and in them I saw fear, not of me, not of what we were doing, but of being alone in that room with him again. And that's when the unknown number buzzed again, right in my pocket, like someone in the walls was watching my feed move, and I didn't even have to read it to know it would say something about whether I stayed or went because Mark's calm voice followed me as I reached for the handle and he added, almost casually, "Before you go, Logan, who do you think sent that complaint to your boss?" Mark's question hung in the air like he just set something fragile on a table and was waiting for it to crack. "Before you go, Logan, who do you think sent that complaint to your boss?" I kept my hand on the door handle, because if I let go, I might do something stupid. "I don't know," I said. Mark's smile stayed polite. "You should," he replied. "It's important to understand where you stand in someone else's life." Vivian's voice cut in sharp. "Stop." Mark turned his head toward her like he was listening to a child interrupt an adult conversation. "I'm not doing anything," he said. "I'm being helpful." He looked back at me. "People in my position hear things," he continued. "And sometimes I can reduce harm. If everyone behaves responsibly." I felt the trap in every syllable. He wanted me to react. He wanted me to say the wrong thing so he could bottle it and use it. "I'm leaving," I said again, and this time I did it. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air. Mark didn't follow. He didn't have to. He'd already done what he came to do. Make sure I understood I was visible and replaceable. As I walked down the path toward the side gate, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out without stopping, because my body was already in that mode now, bracing for impact. Unknown number. Good choice. Keep walking. My jaw clenched. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't want to see the camera dome glinting under the eave. I made it to my truck and sat inside with the doors locked, breathing too fast. My hands shook a little on the steering wheel. Vivian texted before I even started the engine. Don't go. Please. Then another right after. He wants me alone. I stared at those words until my throat tightened. There was no good move. If I went back, I was feeding Mark exactly what he wanted: a story, a picture, a narrative where I looked like the guy who couldn't stay away. If I stayed gone, I was leaving Vivian in a fight she'd been losing on paper for months. I started the engine anyway, pulled away slowly, then drove 2 streets over and parked where I could see the front of her property without being right in front of it. I hated myself for it, but I needed to know she was okay. I needed to know he left. After 10 minutes, a black SUV rolled out of her driveway like it belonged there. It didn't speed off. It glided. That was Mark. He didn't run. He didn't chase. He controlled. When the SUV disappeared, Vivian called me. I answered on the first ring. Are you okay? There was a pause before she spoke, like she was trying to sound composed. He's calm, she said. That's the worst part. He makes it sound like he's saving me from myself. What did he want? I asked. Leverage, she replied. He wants to keep the separation clean in public. He wants to keep his image, his deals, his friends. And he wants me to look unstable if I don't play along. I swallowed. And me? Vivian let out a small, tired breath. He thinks you're useful. That word made my skin crawl. I drove home with the windows down, trying to let cold air scrub the feeling off me. It didn't. The next day at the shop, my boss acted like nothing had happened, which was its own kind of pressure. Like the company had decided to pretend it could outrun the rumor by reshuffling routes. Riley cornered me by the chemical pallets. You went over there, he said. I didn't tell you that, I replied. Riley's eyes narrowed. You don't have to. Your face is doing it. I leaned back against the pallet rack and looked down at my boots. He showed up. Riley's expression changed. Her husband? Separated husband. I corrected automatically, then regretted it. Riley exhaled through his nose. Man! He knows my name, I added. Riley went still. That's bad. Yeah, I said. Riley watched me for a second, then lowered his voice. You need to get out ahead of this. Like, actually. Not just emotionally. How? I asked. I'm the employee. He's, whatever he is. Riley shrugged, but his eyes were sharp. You've been talking about going independent for like a year. I almost laughed. Yeah, with what money? Riley held my gaze. Don't take hers. The way he said it made my stomach drop, because it meant he'd already guessed what Vivian might offer. That night, Vivian texted again, shorter than usual. Can we talk somewhere public tomorrow? Daylight. Please. That surprised me enough that I said yes. We met at a cafe near State Street, the kind of place where laptops and strollers and tourists all blended into noise. Daylight made everything less intimate, which was supposed to make it safer. Vivian sat across from me with sunglasses on, even inside for a minute, like she was protecting her eyes from something. When she took them off, she looked tired in a way she hadn't let me see before. He's going to frame you, she said without warming up. I already know, I replied. He'll say you took advantage, she continued. He'll say you stayed on company time. He'll say you're the reason I'm distracted. Are you? I asked. Vivian's mouth tightened. I'm awake, she said. There's a difference. We sat with that for a second. People walked by outside. A dog barked. A blender whirred behind the counter. Normal life happening around a conversation that felt like it could blow up my future. Vivian leaned forward, lowered her voice. I can help you, she said. In a way that makes you untouchable. I knew what was coming and still felt it like a shove. Vivian, I started. Let me finish, she said, and there was that old business owner tone in her voice, the one that didn't accept interruption. You want your own route. Your own truck. Equipment. It's not even that much in the grand scheme. My jaw clenched. No. Vivian blinked like she didn't expect the answer to come that fast. I'm not taking your money, I said. Not like that. It wouldn't be a gift, she said quickly. It would be an investment. I did that my whole life. I know how to paper it correctly. That's exactly why I can't, I replied. Because Mark would love that. He'd call me bot. He'd call me the help, Vivian said quietly, finishing it for me. I didn't answer because the truth was sitting right there. Vivian looked down at her hands on the table. Her nails were clean, simple. No flashy jewelry. But everything about her still screamed resources. My no labels rule, she said, voice softer now, was supposed to protect me. It protects you, I said. It leaves me out in the open. Vivian's eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time in days she looked like she was actually hearing it, not just understanding it in theory. I'm scared of naming it, she admitted. Because the second I name it, he can drag it into court, into friends' conversations, into everything. And if you don't name it, I said, he names it for you. And for me. Vivian swallowed. What do you want, Logan? I took a breath, because this was the part where I usually shrank. Where I made myself smaller so the other person could stay comfortable. But my boss's office monitor flashed in my head. That photo. That message. That helpless feeling. I want daylight, I said. I want public. I want time where I'm not your employee. And I want it to be something we're not ashamed of. Vivian's throat moved as she swallowed again. That's not what I said I wanted. I know, I replied. But I'm the one who gets crushed first. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was deciding whether to be offended or honest. Then she nodded once, very small. Okay, she said. I didn't relax. I couldn't. Okay, what? Vivian leaned back, eyes steady now. Okay. I'll close the loop, she said. What loop? I asked. The part that makes you vulnerable, she said. The part he can point at and say you're an employee crossing lines. My pulse picked up. Vivian. She held my gaze. I'm going to end the client relationship officially, she said. New pool company. Paper trail. Clean switch. No more your employee. I sat there stunned, because that was a real consequence. Not a text. Not a midnight drive. A decision that would cost her convenience and cost me income. And my boss? I asked. I'll email him myself, she said. Not about you. About the account. I'll say we're changing providers. No complaint. No issue. Just a change. It was the first time she'd offered help that didn't make me look bought. And you? I asked, quieter. What about you and Mark? Vivian's eyes hardened slightly. He's going to be furious, she said. Not because he cares. Because he loses a lever. I nodded slowly. He'll still talk. He'll talk no matter what, she said. But if the employee angle is gone, he has less. I exhaled and felt some of the pressure ease, just a fraction. Then my phone buzzed, and my whole body went tight again. Unknown number. Daylight won't save you. I showed Vivian the screen this time, because hiding it was pointless now. She read it, and something cold passed over her face. I know who this is, she said. My stomach dropped. Who? Vivian didn't answer immediately. She looked out the cafe window, jaw set, like she was choosing her next move. Then she looked back at me and said, very quietly, It's not Mark. And the way she said it made me realize there was someone else in her life with access, Someone who could install cameras and pull gate logs and send anonymous emails without getting their hands dirty. And as she reached for her phone, she added, "And that means we've been looking at the wrong person the whole time, because the one who's texting you isn't trying to scare me, they're trying to make you run." And the moment she said that, my phone buzzed again with a new message that popped up on the lock screen before I could stop it. Ask her about the house manager. My stomach tightened at the words on my screen. Ask her about the house manager. I looked up at Vivian. House manager? Vivian's eyes didn't widen. That's what scared me. She didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed, like someone had finally said the quiet part out loud. "We don't call her that," Vivian said. "But yes." "Who?" I asked. Vivian didn't say the name right away. She glanced around the cafe, then leaned in. "Her name's Celeste," she said. "She runs the house. Staff schedules, deliveries, vendors. She's been around for years. And she can access, what?" I asked. "Everything," Vivian said flatly. "Gate codes. Vendor calendars. She can call my security company and nobody questions it. If she asks for logs, she can get them." My skin went cold. Why would she do this? Vivian's mouth tightened. "Because Mark pays her," she said, then corrected herself, like accuracy mattered. "Because Mark used to pay her. And because she hates me." "Hates you?" I repeated. Vivian's eyes hardened. She was loyal to the marriage. Loyal to the household. Loyal to the version of me that didn't disrupt anything. And now. Vivian shook her head once. Now I'm the problem in her story. I stared at my phone again like it could explain it better than Vivian could. All those messages. The camera. The complaint. The timing. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. Vivian held my gaze, calm but tired. "Because I didn't want to make you paranoid," she said. "And because I hoped I was wrong." I let out a rough breath. "I already feel paranoid." Vivian nodded once like she accepted that. Then she reached for her phone and started typing with a kind of focus I'd only seen when she was negotiating something. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Taking control back," she said. She turned the screen toward me so I could see the email draft. It was addressed to my boss and to a generic company inbox. Short, professional, clean. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't blaming. She was stating facts. That she would be transitioning Pool's service to a different provider effective immediately. That all future appointments would be handled through her office. That there were no issues with service quality, and she appreciated the work so far. Just a clean exit. A paper trail that didn't mention me at all. Vivian hit send without asking permission. I stared at the sent confirmation like it was a door closing. "That's it?" I asked. "For that part," she replied. "Now I handle my house." I didn't miss what she didn't say. Now she handles Celeste. I should have felt relieved. The employee/client angle was gone. Mark couldn't point at my uniform and say I crossed a line on company hours. But the income was gone too. The hard route was my best one, the smoothest, the one that made my week easier. Losing it felt like losing a rung on a ladder I'd been climbing with my fingernails. "What about me?" I asked, and I hated how much it sounded like a question that belonged in a different kind of relationship. Vivian looked at me for a long second. "You don't need me," she said carefully. "Not for work." "That's not what I meant," I said. "I know," she replied. We left the cafe separately, like two people who understood the rules of daylight. Vivian walked toward her car with her sunglasses back on. I walked toward my truck with my phone heavy in my pocket. That night my boss texted me. "Hard account cancelled. Clean. No complaint noted. Good work staying professional." It should have felt like a win. It felt like walking away from a cliff and realizing you didn't fall, but you still lost something. The next weeks were rough in a quiet way. My schedule got patched with smaller accounts. More driving, more old equipment, more people who forgot to close gates and blamed you when the water turned cloudy. Riley didn't say much, but he started tossing me the better side jobs. Small stuff. A neighbor's pump swap. A friend of a friend who needed a filter rebuild. Paid cash, documented where it mattered, nothing shady. Just a foothold. You serious about going independent? He asked me one afternoon while we loaded supplies. Yeah, I said. Riley nodded like he'd been waiting for that. Then act like it, he replied. Every clean job is a seed. Vivian didn't text for a while. Not because she was punishing me. Because she was dealing with her own fire. When she did reach out again, it wasn't to pull me into her backyard. It was one line. Beach. Early. Sunrise. If you want. I didn't answer right away. I stared at it, and thought about cameras and complaints and Mark's calm voice saying employees like it was a collar. Then I typed. Okay. Public. The beach was cold at that hour. The sand held the night chill, and the air smelled like kelp and salt. The sky was just starting to lighten, gray-blue turning to a thin orange line at the horizon. Vivian was already there when I arrived, standing with her hands in her jacket pockets, hair loose, no makeup that I could tell, no jewelry that caught light. Just a person. We didn't hug. We didn't do anything that would make a stranger stop and stare. We walked along the water line, shoes in hand, letting the foam chase our feet. I fired her, Vivian said after a few minutes. Celeste? I asked. Vivian nodded once. Quietly. With paperwork. Severance. An NDA. The whole boring grown-up thing. And Mark? I asked. Vivian's mouth tightened. He's trying to spin it, she said. He wants to make it look like I'm unstable. Like I'm making reckless choices. I glanced at her. Are you? Vivian looked out at the water and let the question sit. Then she said, This made me feel awake again. I didn't reply right away. The waves filled the space. I'm not going to be your secret, I said finally. Not angry. Just firm. Vivian's eyes flicked to mine. I know, she said. And I'm not taking your money, I added. Not to start a business. Not to buy a truck. Not anything that can be twisted. Vivian nodded. I know that too. We walked until the sun started breaking over the water, turning everything gold, and for a second the world looked soft enough to lie to you. Vivian slowed and faced me, stopping just above the wet sand so her shoes wouldn't get hit by the next wave. So what are we doing? She asked. I let out a breath. We pause, I said. Until your separation is actually settled. Until I'm not tied to any company where someone can call and complain and ruin me. Vivian's throat moved as she swallowed. And if it takes months? Then it takes months, I said. I'm not going to keep living like I'm waiting for somebody else to decide who I am. Vivian held my gaze, and there was something steady in her face now. Something that looked like respect, not just want. Okay, she said again, but this time it sounded different. Like she meant it. We walked back toward the parking lot as the beach filled with early joggers and dog walkers. Normal people. Daylight people. The kind of world where secrets don't last because everyone can see you. At her car, Vivian hesitated like she wanted to reach for me, then didn't. She didn't make it dramatic. She just said, Be careful. I will, I replied. She drove away, and I stood there for a second with the sun on my face, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. The months after that weren't glamorous. They were work. Long days. More side jobs. A used truck I bought with my own money, not pretty but mine. A cheap magnet sign with my name on it that made me feel both proud and ridiculous. Riley helped where he could. He introduced me to people. He didn't do favors that would get him fired. He just nudged doors open. And I kept my head down. I did clean work. I showed up when I said I would. I stopped trying to be liked by people who could crush me and started focusing on being solid. One evening, months later, I drove the coastal road alone, the one that curves along the cliffs like it's showing off. I passed the overlook where that unknown number had messaged me, where the wind had cut through everything and made Vivian look like someone real for a second. I didn't pull in. I just kept driving. Not because it didn't matter. Because I finally understood that the best part of whatever Vivian and I had wasn't the late-night pool lights or the lemonade or the quiet closeness that made me forget I was the help. It was the fact that it forced me to stop living like a background character, and as the cliff road opened up in front of me with the ocean dark on one side and the city lights starting to wake up on the other, my phone buzzed on the seat and I let it buzz twice before I even looked at it, because whatever name was on that screen, I was done letting other people decide what I did next while the headlights swept over the next curve and the night air came in through the cracked window smelling like salt and possibility and something unfinished.